All right, you guys, what's going on? This is Blaze here at the Blue Chip Athletic Club podcast. I'm stoked to welcome Dominic onto the show today to talk all things health and wellness. Maybe we'll get some jujitsu discussion into, and I'll tell you about my fun time giving it a shot when I was living in California, and then anything in between. But really excited to have him on. I'm not going to read off any podcast sponsors because I don't want to kind of waste any of the opportunity. They'll all be in the show notes, but I want to welcome you on, man. Thanks a lot for coming. And then do me a favor, like just go back, origin story as far back as you want, and then where you're from, what you do, and then we can kind of dissect and go down different rabbit holes from there.
Oh, wow. Okay. Origin story as far as it goes. Yeah. I have a pretty interesting background, and it does tie into all the things that I do now, I think. Originally born suburb of Cleveland, Ohio. My dad got sick of the weather when I was probably, before I even turned one, moved to Tucson, Arizona. Spent most of my youth out in Tucson. In the late 70s, early 80s, where there was zero supervision. So, I spent my days kind of like rampant, just on my own, running through the desert, catching poisonous snakes and spiders and all the stuff, which was pretty fun. Lived in Las Cruces, New Mexico for a couple of years, and then came back home as I was getting older. All my family's out here. Interestingly enough, kind of attached to that, kind of a thing that influences who I am today and how I do things and what I do. I'm technically an only child. My dad's been married 3 times, though. So I've spent half my life, well, it's more than that now. Half of my life as the youngest of 3, and more than half of my life as the oldest of 3. So right now I've got like 2 younger brothers. So it's given me perspective, living in different places and, kind of being in those different hierarchical positions in the family. So that's pretty interesting. All of that kind of led to me kind of growing up as a chubby kid, man, and then eventually became an obese kid. My daughter just walked in and made like a big belly.
No way.
As she heard me say that. So yeah, like there was, I was always a heavy kid, kind of from the younger days. I grew up pretty much with just my dad, as a single dad. My mom was, she suffered with some mental illness. She was hospitalized and stuff. That's when they would put people in hospitals and they'd still have like, they'd have like halfway houses and stuff. So she was there. Moved back home, like I said, back to the Cleveland area as I was headed into high school. All our family and stuff is here. And so, I started playing sports in high school, started playing football specifically. I was always kind of like the bigger kid. I was a lineman. I'm not very tall though, so I was more of the round guy. I was at least fast then-ish.
Those people are required, dude. We need those guys, You filled in a vital role.
Yeah, and played a couple of years of college football at a D3 school and all that stuff. But I was, like I said, I was very, very big. I was big, and then during college, after I stopped playing football, I just was partying a lot, and I put on a lot of weight. I became pretty big. After college, I did the Bill Phillips Body for Life thing for like a year. I dropped like 50, 60 pounds, and then stopped doing all that stuff and just blew up even bigger. Fast forward a few years, I started playing rugby, and lots of beer drinking and just being a glutton, and it started getting even bigger. I stopped stepping on the scale. All this kind of leads up to this point. I stopped stepping on the scale when I was about 320 pounds, right? Like I'm 5'6".
How tall are you?
Like 5'6" on a lucky day, man.
Wow. Yeah.
That was a bowling ball.
Yeah,
It actually worked out. It worked out in rugby when I carried the ball. People couldn't tackle me. They just,
For
just
sure. Yeah.
and so, but I couldn't play. I just, I couldn't last the full 80 minutes. I could tell you that. Like I just, I was, not healthy and not fit. I started one season. I was getting prepared for the season, and this was back in 2008 ish. That was like the P90X was kind of the thing as CrossFit was starting to come up too. Like my buddy had the DVDs. I'm like, I'll try that. Do that to get ready for the season.
The P90X guy was shredded, by the way. That dude
He
was
still is.
dude was no joke, man. I did it in my basement, man, when I was
Tony
yeah,
Horton.
he was jacking steel.
Bro,
He's crazy.
So I've spent time with him. I got into the whole thing. Actually, it was interesting. I met a guy who became kind of a mentor for me, kind of coming through that. He lives not too far from me, very similar build. Like he's still a football coach to this day. He played college football, lineman, like very similar, like size, stature, all the stuff. He became the poster boy for P90X. He used to travel with Tony Horton. He was on like, what is the QVC? He was on the infomercials. He was on QVC with Tony. Did all this stuff.
It's awesome.
So like him and I became friends, and it was kind of like if he could do this, I could do this, and so I was kind of into that. I found out that my wife was pregnant with our son the same day that one of my best friends passed away. Like we found out the same day, and that kind of flipped the switch for me. It was like, before I was just doing all the exercise. I didn't care about any of the other stuff. I was still sucking down 24 beers in a sitting on a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and, sometimes on a Sunday too, depending on what was going on. And like, yeah, I'm, eating double bacon cheeseburgers and all this stuff. And, when that happened, when my friend passed away, that kind of clicked for me. I've always been a person that was like, kids are going to do what the parents do. And I wanted to be a good example. So, I kind of made the vow to myself, my kids are never going to see me physically unhealthy. Like that's not going to happen. And so I really dedicated myself. I ran that program. I did the P90X literally for like 18 months straight. Like I just kept recycling it. And I got some of the other DVDs and mixed them in and did all that. And I actually started paying attention to my nutrition. Part of that led me to Precision Nutrition. I got their kit and I started using some of their tools and all that stuff. So I lost 120 plus pounds back in like the final date when I did a contest and kind of got weighed in and all that stuff was 2010.
What was the contest? You were like you were doing like bodybuilding competitively, or?
No, it was like Beachbody had the transformation contest linked to all of their products.
Dude,
right?
120 pounds is a lot of weight. Super impressive. It's super impressive. I mean, when you think about the fact that you weighed 320, I mean, it's more than a third of your weight in general that you had lost, which is crazy.
Yeah. So when I actually really started focusing, I was about 300 pounds or just shy of 300 pounds at that point. Like I had lost 20 pounds kind of in there. And then, so really overall, it was more like 140 pounds. So, I had done all that stuff. I lost the weight, then I went back to school. I started getting interested in nutrition and started doing different nutrition certifications. People were asking me, what are you doing? How do you do it? Right. And I started coaching people, and I've gone through all of the phases, right? I went through all of the fads. Like, let me try this. Let me try this. I've done them all, right? Atkins, keto, paleo, carnivore, like all of them. I did all of the stuff. Trying different things through them after I had lost this weight. Like what works for me? How do I keep doing this? All that. Got into, kind of shifted more. I was still playing rugby. That changed quite a bit, right? Like now I'm like 120 pounds later. everything changed. How I played, I move around much better, but like I'm not running people over anymore. Uh, so it was like, oh, and that was a lot of fun. Stop drinking, kind of like I did, and all that stuff. But like I said, I had to learn. I learned a lot about food. I started, got into like powerlifting and got back into actually lifting weights and training for athletics and that thing, and did a CSCS and all the other things to start training athletes in the weight room, and did some certifications with like Joel Jameson and conditioning and all that stuff. So I've gone through a lot of, kind of evolved a lot, and that kind of fast forward to somewhere along the line in 2012. I was coaching people on the side. I worked full time at a Fortune 100 company. It was an insurance company, and I was coaching on the side, and all the things that made me really good at what I was doing in my job, they wanted me to stop doing, and just wanted me to start kind of going into another path that I didn't really care for. So I started looking like, how do I make this health and wellness thing a full-time gig for me? Reached out to PN. They weren't hiring. I saw that they were hiring just maybe 6 months prior. They ended up hiring Brian St. Pierre, who's still PN's main dietitian. Super smart guy, awesome. Was a good athlete when he was younger. I ended up just getting in contact with them. I kind of got to know the gatekeepers. I made a cover story or a cover letter, wrote up my resume, sent it in even when they weren't hiring, and just kind of kept in contact. Randomly, like 6 months later, I get a phone call and they're like, "Hey, we're hiring. We'd like to interview you." Right? And so I went and did my interview, and they offered me the position. As soon as I hung up the phone, I walked into my manager's office and gave my notice, and that was it. Started coaching full time for PN, and haven't looked back since. So that's kind of the origin story up to about 2013 in a nutshell, right? If you
Nice. And then been doing that ever since, and enjoying that as well, I'm sure, right? So what did the job look like when you first came on to work with PN? I got a ton of questions for you too that I'm thinking of as we
Fire
kind of
them
go
all
through
out,
your
man.
story.
Like
So yeah, it's gonna be good. No, it's gonna be good. Like, so you made this big shift in life, and you're going in here to drop off working in insurance to then working in coaching, two obviously drastically different fields. And then they're hiring you on as what? You're going to then coach for them as like
Mhm.
under their model, or are you
Correct.
coaching coaches? Because I know you're doing that now as well.
Yeah.
So
So they didn't have that then. They were the level 1 certification was a textbook, and it was just starting to. They were just developing it at that time, or had just been released. So I got hired as a coach. This is when PN was mainly focused on coaching other people. So we had coaching clients. My first deal when I first came in, I had a cohort of 345 men that I coached. Like
that's
that
a
was,
lot of dudes.
yeah,
And you're
yep.
taking what did that look like for you on a day-to-day basis? Like, are you 8 to 4 and you're taking client calls for a half hour and just blasting through? Like, how's that look?
Yeah, so interesting. It's a good question. The program was very different then. It was a little bit more kind of directive than what PN teaches and how we coach now, right? As we've learned behavior change science and all that stuff over the years. That group was mostly online. Everyone got, basically, we had them in our software. It was a year-long program, and every day they got a lesson they had to read. They got a workout. So we had a year of workouts programmed in. So they had a lesson, a workout, and a daily practice. We called them habits then, a thing that they had to develop as a habit. And so it was a lot of me kind of checking kind of their consistency with the thing, reaching out, checking in. It was mostly asynchronous online, which eventually for me I am, you've been around me. I'm a belly to belly person. I like to talk. I don't want to be like, I can't stand not just chopping it up with people. So I started, I had and they gave you the leeway in the agency to do things. So back then it was whenever I wanted to work was when I worked, right? Which was beautiful, right? There would be sometimes I didn't do anything all day long. And then I would start working at like 8 o'clock at night and I'd work till midnight, right? Like, or
You're
whatever.
sick, dude.
Well, it doesn't happen now, right?
Yeah, I was about to say, dude, I'm a bag of shit after about 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Like, I'm
I'm with you.
surprised this is even going as well as it's going.
I just came from a loaded day. Trust me, I just taught class. I had to like sit and pause for like 10 minutes and like, let me gather myself before I embarrass myself on this podcast. So it was pretty flexible then. Like I said, though, it was all pretty directed. It was already it was paced out. It wasn't the phone calls, but it was a boatload of emails, man, just emailing back and forth. And, we developed our systems and all of these things over the years. So that's what it started off like. Eventually, we developed the level 2 certification, which is, coaching other coaches how to coach. And this is, so at some point along the way, PN started off as kind of like, hey, we're the experts, do what we say, you're going to get the change that you want. And, and if you don't, we give you your money back. And then eventually we're kind of like, our job is this isn't an information problem. Our job isn't telling people what to do. 1 out of 10 people would actually do the stuff, right? And most of the time, those people didn't need us in the first place. So what we really realized was that our jobs and how to coach was to help people change their behavior. So, the really, really smart people that we have working and had working for us kind of developed a whole curriculum and went down the rabbit hole and did all the stuff around change psychology and all these things, behavior change. And then we put this coaching curriculum together. And I was in the beta group where we invited a bunch of people. And then the first cohort I co-taught with Ryan Andrews, who's super awesome dietitian. Used to work for PN and coach for PN. He no longer does, but he's out there doing his own thing. And Jake Bond and another coach that we had as well. So that was that was about 2015. That was the first cohort of the level 2 that I taught. I was coaching actually the coaches men's program and the L2, splitting time. And then eventually I just went to the L2 full time. So I still keep a handful of my own coaching clients, just to keep right. I got to keep my tools sharp. I feel like if I'm teaching, instructing, and coaching other coaches how to do this work, I need to make sure I'm staying on top of it myself.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah. It's it's an interesting thing. And for people that don't truly know, I guess maybe break down a little bit of that and what that truly means. So I obviously know, because that's kind of how I got connected with you and finding PN, and I've done a handful of their certifications myself, the L1, L2. I did sleep, stress, and recovery as well. So it just kind of got interested in doing things in my own coaching practice, and then kind of went down a handful of rabbit holes, I guess. You guys got me along the way. And I find that your coaching methods are super interesting. And it's funny, like you say, like, oh, you're now coaching coaches. But the reality is, every time that we would hop on a coaching or a mentor call, it's the same exact process that you guys were using at PN to tell us when we were doing them with other people, but you guys were just doing it with us as coaches. So like that framework still is the same regardless. And I don't want to say is like plug and play, because you still have to know intricacies of emotional intelligence and those other pieces of being like an effective coach and listener and I'll say like somebody to help guide versus telling somebody to go drink the water,
Yeah, that's exactly
but I'd love
what
to
it
hear
is.
like your breakdown and like how you guys like formulate that. And then I want to go back to a couple of questions I have about your kind of, I guess, origin story that I penciled in over here too.
Yeah. I mean, it really comes back to, and you've heard me, some of the stuff can feel, the science part and behind it can be pretty dry, right? So, you've been in my classes, you've been around, like I find things to spice it up. I'll make my own versions of the things that stand out for people. And, you've always heard me say, care less, play dumb, right? And be lazy. right? And so what that really means is that kind of summarizes coming back to, we have to meet the people where they are. We meet them with unconditional positive regard. You know, we care about them, but I can't care about like how they choose to go about doing things, right? Because ultimately it's about giving them agency and autonomy. Um, we have an innate thing built into us as humans where if someone tells you to do something, we almost instantly resist every time, right?
Yeah,
So
that's
I,
my parents, dude. Yeah,
yeah, so you, like I say all the time, I look at my clients like giant children, right? Like
for sure.
you might be a grown ass man, but I still see you as like you're a child that if I tell you not to do the thing, you're instantly going to want to do the thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because I was like that as a kid, right? I'm still like that as an adult,
yeah, yeah. I can relate as well.
right? And I had a really I have a funny story about that with my daughter. I'll come back to it. But so it's the approach in the coaching is really empowering people to make their own choices. I always say this kind of coaching is very different from what people think coaching is and what they've usually typically experienced. I don't tell you what to do. Instead, I'll help give you a little bit of information that's relevant. We'll talk about it in the context of your life and what that might mean for you, and then we develop how are we going to use this information and implement it into action in your life and in your behavior, right? That way the person owns it. It's their idea. It's their thing. They have autonomy. They make their own choice. They're not trying to please me. It's not their job to please me. And I tell them that all the time, right? I don't care, right? It comes back to the care less. I care about you as a person, but I don't care what you do. If you choose to eat a whole cake, I don't care. We're going to talk about what that might mean for you and how you're going to handle it and how you move forward.
And
If
how your
it's a good
stomach
thing,
will hurt. Yeah.
yeah, or whatever, right? For someone that might be like, hey, this is what I needed. I'm ready to reset. Cool. Okay. Someone else that might be like, this, I feel terrible. I feel guilty. Okay, fine. So what do we do about it moving forward? It's the same thing, right? That's why I kind of chuckle when you see people arguing online about like what is the best diet. It's like, oh, you can't eat this and you got to eat it this way and this is the only way. And it's like, no, you know what? Like all these diets all work. They all work, right? There's 1,000 different diets. If you go to a physical bookstore that still exists, there's still some of them out there.
They
There's a
still
thousand.
exist. Barnes and
Yeah,
Noble's around, dude.
yeah. But if you go to the diet section, there's 1,000 different kinds, right? There's like the cookie diet, the Twinkie diet, the Jesus diet, right? The South Beach diet, paleo, carnivore, vegan, right? There's like the skinny bitch diet, the Jesus diet. Like these are all
Yeah.
actual things, right? And the thing is, there's always a whole group of people that are like, this is the best way, this is the only way. It's because the tenets of the approach fit into the context of their belief system and their ability to execute the approach, right? And so that's the biggest thing. If we're giving people autonomy and we're helping them figure out what works in the context of their life, then they're going to be able to do it for a long term. So it's really about building skills. It's about building skills. It's not about doing a thing or not doing a thing. It's about learning and building skills that are going to continuously move you forward. Whether you're sprinting or crawling, you're still moving in the same direction because you're building skills and you have a skill set to rely on.
Yeah,
Right?
and and you hit on it as well. It's like, what can you consistently do? And I and you, I'm sure, have seen there's people out there that'll be like, oh, I lost 30 pounds eating keto for the last 3 months, and it's like, sweet, like, so are you gonna do that forever? And are you gonna eat keto forever? And there's some people that are like, oh yeah, dude, I can do this, and I can do it until I die. And I'm like, that is great, that is
Awesome.
excellent. If you feel great doing that, that's great. And then some people are like, I don't know if I can do this for forever. And then it's like, well,
Yep.
that's where it starts to become tumultuous. And you start to find yourself in a position where, hey, the yo-yoing and the constant diet bait, clickbait stuff that I think the microwave results, but we're in a crockpot world, if you will. Like we got to take our time and figure out the thing that works for you. And some of that takes potentially hiring somebody like you or somebody else in the field that's like going to be able to guide somebody through this process for their own life. Because the reality too, look at the power of AI right now, right? Like, oh my gosh, if I'm somebody who's like, oh, I want to eat this amount of macronutrients and I want this amount of proteins, carbs, and fats, and blah blah blah, it'll plot out your entire weeks. It'll give you, different meals that you can plan. It'll write you a workout program. But that's something I like to say with our clients too, is like, hey, bro, like we can give you Michael Jordan's training program and his diet and everything, but you're not Michael Jordan. Like, it's not going to work for you. And you're not going to be sitting there shooting free throws after you lost a game on the line for hours on end. Like, that's just not you. So how do we make that approach fit your life so that you can be more successful?
Yeah, 100 times over. And I think the thing that you touched on with the AI piece, you've heard me say this. I'm like, if your coach, or if you as a coach are simply giving people meal plans and telling them the macros to eat, you are already obsolete, because AI can do it. I could go get a free app to do that. You're already replaced, right? Whereas real coaching, what we're talking about, AI is never going to replace the human piece, right? Like, cool, we can work with the numbers and stuff, but the AI is not going to have the conversation and have the empathy and have the like true empathy and be able to meet people where they are and help guide them and sit with them through the things and make these, and that's where the behavior change actually happens, right? And so that's really where we spend a lot of the time. It's really more about connection and helping them learn the skills than it is anything else.
Yeah. And that's the funny thing, is it's not sexy, man. That's the thing that I think is like, it's like, here's another analogy that I think of all the time. It's like, I think men in particular, if you're a golfer, you would rather buy yourself a new set of golf clubs than spend a couple $100 on lessons. And when Tiger Woods is going to smoke my ass in the worst set of golf clubs that he can possibly buy, or the best set, it doesn't matter. And like, I could be in the best set and he could be in the worst set and I'm still going to get killed. It doesn't like compute. And that thing is true in the coaching world as well, right? Like, you have AI, you have all these tools, and if you were going to be successful, like, why aren't you there already? And I think that's just such a easy thing to kind of gloss over, but it's because of the behavior changes and because of the true pieces of coaching that I feel like you're kind of hitting on in there as well. So to kind of pivot a little bit, I want to know, like, for you, you had this, I'll say, like, character arc of like, hey, you were a bigger dude. You hit this moment where you're like, hey, I'm not doing this anymore because I don't want my kids to grow up like this. And that to me is like a big identity shift. That's like hey, I'm not going to be this person anymore. Where you're finding this new, what I'll call, like, guiding North Star. So what did that do to your, like, relationship with food and alcohol and those types of things, to where, like, you were in this position now, and then, like, maybe some people that are in the alcohol space or something like that have had a similar thing where they just like had a moment where, like, all right, that's enough and I'm done. But I'm interested to hear kind of like what shift that made, and then the questions you started to ask yourself, like, hey, when you were in a social setting and before you delete 24 beers in a sitting, or it was hey, there's
Easy.
15, there's a Costco pizza out here and I'm gonna, like, hammer that on Wednesday and Thursday instead of making food. Like, what did that look like for you when you were kind of getting into it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say, just to kind of paint to fill this picture. If you've ever seen Tommy, I was Tommy Boy, right? Like, when you see him in the beginning of the movie when he's in college,
Yeah.
right? That was me, right? That was me, right? Like, I would, like, when I was in
If
college.
anybody hasn't seen Tommy Boy, also, like, go do yourself a favor. Like, let it be known.
Yeah, like, I forgot like how old that is now.
No way, man. No way. It's a classic, cult
Um,
classic.
but like, I was the guy that, in college, I made a beer bong out of an oil filter, right? And we called it the Widowmaker. I could put 6 beers in that thing, right? I could bong 6 beers before most people could bong one, right? I'd be like, all right, let's race, right? Like, so I had that kind of kind of like competitive edge. Like it was kind of like, if I'm doing it, I'm blowing this out, right?
Right,
And
right,
that's
right.
how I
You're gonna be
was,
the best. You're gonna be the
right?
best.
I was I'm gonna be the best glutton I can be, right? That's where I was, right? There was times where I would order pizza. I would order like a large pizza and tell them not to cut it, right? And I would roll that thing up like a taquito, and I would just eat it, like, you know.
It's kind of
Right?
awesome. Honestly, it's kind of a good idea. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Well, in Italy, they don't cut pizza, right? They don't
Yeah,
they don't cut the pizza, but it's also, much smaller.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, so that kind of carried forward, as I went, and now it's like, okay, I'm putting all my energy. I was adrift. I mean, really, I didn't have purpose, and I didn't have direction. And I think that's one of the main things, like I had purpose at that point. It was like, oh, I have to be responsible for another human, right? I'm not, I have to do this to the best of my ability. And so that's where some of that change in my identity went. So now it's like, I can tell you, I mean, I didn't just become a teetotaler. I didn't stop drinking or any of that stuff. I mean, I just came way, way down. I have like composition notebooks. I can tell you from back in the day where I was keep track of all my numbers from when I was doing the P90X. I have days in there. It was like, you know, I have notes as like hungover, numbers are low today, right? Like that kind of stuff. Like missed yesterday, so I did 2 workouts today, right? Those kinds of notes are in there. So I go back and I look at that sometimes. But the shift with the food was kind of like, okay, now um, I went from eating this like really highly caloric, right, high calorically dense food, that was low volume, to like eating this really high volume, highly nutrient dense food. And the amount of food, when you're 300 pounds and you go from eating, like you do the math and you figure out how much food to eat, and you go from eating it in like a cheesesteak with double cheese and mayonnaise to now you're eating, potatoes and vegetables and lean meat. It was a disgusting amount of food for me. So that was a big adjustment. And I point that out to people all the time. That was hard, right? I'm never going to lose weight. I feel bloated all day, every day. This is worse than when I was just eating all this other food. So that was an adjustment. I had to learn, okay, this is too much. I need to make these adjustments. I don't have to eat all of the vegetables. That's too much. I can eat a little bit of this. I can eat a little bit of that. When it came to like the drinking, the social piece was the most interesting piece. I told people in the process what I was doing. I made this little contract thing that said, this is my commitment. This is what I'm doing. And I went around to my friends and my family, and it was like, this is what I'm doing. I'm asking you to help me by just keeping me accountable, by just saying that you understand this. And I made them sign the thing. So they all knew what I was doing. I got them involved. It didn't stop some of them from, like, we were at the parties and they're like, you're healthy. You can't eat that. What if I'm picking up like a piece of pizza? And, that's a whole different conversation. I had to learn how to navigate those situations. There's cultural things I had to learn how to, like, at a family holiday party, when my aunt made like a dish that she knows I really enjoyed, like I had, and maybe I wasn't, it just, I had already eaten or something. I had to find ways to appease her and at the same time not eat the food, right? So I learned things like, saying, hey, I really love this. I'm very satisfied right now. I can't eat another bite. Can I take a piece of the pie home with me and I'll have it later on, right? So she's happy that I'm enjoying it, but at the same time, I don't have to be a glutton and eat the thing right now, which I would have done in a heartbeat before, right? The drinking piece was interesting because all this happened as I was playing rugby, and there's a very huge social piece to rugby where you have a social after every match, where the other team, whoever the home team is, you host the other team and you feed them and you eat together and you drink together, right? And so I just had to find swaps, like, I started doing things like, rather than drinking beer, I might have like a vodka soda. And then I started mixing in like, oh, I'm just going to have a plain soda every other one, right? So I'm not taking in the same amount, doing things like that. And a lot of my friends were actually pretty supportive in there too. Some of them busted my chops a little bit, but in a very like not in a way that would make me be like, oh, I can't do this. They're going to be,
Yeah.
it's just, typical kind of, that most of them were ex-military, right? So you understand, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
the the ball busting,
Of
but it
course.
was in a good way. Like, they all supported me and was happy about that. So
It's really interesting. Like you hit on a couple of things that I feel like I want to pick out of that. And one of them is like the journey wasn't like cut and dry and where you were like one
oh
day
no,
you're snapping your fingers and you had this like big shift and you're like,
I
oh, the next day and
no
forever after that, I
no
ate perfect. I didn't drink and I
far
became like
from
a
it,
nun, like those
far
things
from it.
didn't happen. And I think for anybody listening too, like if you decide to make that identity shift, realize that identity shifts and those things and statements end up taking some time to matriculate and then get you to where you find success. But like you said before, like even if you're crawling forward, you're still moving forward, and that's super important.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
yeah,
Yeah, so the playing the long game is one of the most important pieces in this whole process. And I did. So it sounds like, oh, I lost this weight in 18 months. It was a little bit longer than that. Like I said, I had already lost 20 pounds. When I really started focusing, that process was about 18 pounds, or 18 months. That's when I lost that big chunk immediately. But then there was a whole couple of years there where my weight came up and down, maybe uh, you know, 10, 15, 20 pounds, where I was sorting through those things, right? I fell on my face a lot, right? Through that whole process. It wasn't like you said, just like I went from 0 to 100 perfectly. And that's not the case. Uh, it was recognizing when I first decided to get serious and I was like, I'm going to do this thing. It wasn't like I'm losing 100 pounds. It wasn't like I've got this goal weight. I didn't do any of that. As a matter of fact, I didn't even step on the scale for probably the first 6 months. What I did do was tell myself, I told you I had my friend that was like the little poster boy for P90X. It took him about just over a year to lose 100 pounds. I'm like, I'm going to do the best I can every single day for a year and see what happens. The best I can wasn't perfect either. Like I told you, I had notes where it's like, I missed a workout today because I slept in or I was drunk or whatever. So I made up for it the next day, or maybe I didn't. I had the notes in there, but I just kept showing up. And so that's what I said. I thought, do the best I can for an entire year and see what happens. And then that kind of rolled into 18 months.
it's so crazy that you did that and you set that goal, because I feel like a lot of times in coaching, people will overestimate what they can do in a month and then underestimate what they can do in a year. And it's like, oh, this 28-day ab shredded program or blah, blah, blah. The clickbaity stuff that I feel like performs really well. You don't see anybody being like, oh, yeah, that year program sounds super fun. Like they're like, no, I want something like now. And that kind of goes back to that microwave results, but we're in a crockpot world thing that we were talking about before. Like I feel like that ends up selling in this world, which makes it challenging for the true coaching to occur. But I think another thing that I pulled out of that is that you went out of your way to get social support. And this is something that I think is like really challenging, especially for people that feel like they can't. And I've had clients where I'm like coaching like one of the two couples, like let's say like male partner, and then the female partner, and I'm like, hey, like, have you ever thought about, asking your wife for a little bit of accountability or like telling them about what you're trying to do? And they're like, no, like almost as if, I don't know if it's like a shame element or if it's like a, hey, I don't necessarily want to involve them in that. And then if and when we get to the point where they feel confident or at least comfortable in asking for a little bit of that social support, maybe not signing this contract like you had people do over there, but
Yeah.
in some way kind of gaining some of that support from them, I feel like it just ends up going a super, super long way. Hey, maybe you could help me stay accountable to this goal, or hey, could we try to shop at the grocery store together so that I can have a say in some of the stuff that we're eating, or whatever the kind of goal becomes. And you kind of went full bore, and I'll say like Jason Bourne style, and we're like, hey, dude, sign this to help hold me accountable with it, which I think is a really unique way to do it. And a lot of people might be like, oh, this guy's nuts, but
It was a little
social support
overboard
is
back
so
then.
important, right? Like, geez
It was,
Louise, like it's so key. And I think like, especially the people that you're around the most, like if you can get them on board and know like what you're doing, one, it like is like a public declaration of you're doing the thing. And two, they're also going to be like, oh, hey, you remember like you're trying to do X, and they're not going to, negatively bust your balls about not having a drink or something like that when you're out with somebody. I feel like it just really fosters a really like positive relationship. And most people in the end of the day are pretty positive about the shift, especially if you're trying to do it for your own health.
yeah. No, that you're right. I mean, I probably went. There was a little overboard with
Jason Bourne style,
the
dude. I dig it, man. I would have done something
with
similar for real.
with the form, but I think so. It's an interesting thing because I do see this a lot. I actually have a current client that was kind of like this. I'll ask like, "Hey, who do you need support from?" Like nobody. I'm like, well, you know, what about your, like, what does your partner think about what you're doing? It's like, well, I don't really talk about it, right? And it's like because if they don't know, it doesn't matter. And it's like, well, no, right? And then we can kind of get into, uh, you know, can you get support from them? Um, that social support is important, especially at least from the people in your house. So it's interesting because when you asked me before about the food and the shifts, this was something I missed. So this is a good kind of bridge back to that. When I first decided to kind of change the food side, right? I was doing the exercise piece, right? But when I first decided to shift on the food, that was, after my friend had passed away. That's when I was like, I'm going all in because before I was just exercising. Um, I I'll never forget this, and she just walked by, but I sat down with my wife and I was like, look, we need to make some changes. I need to make some changes, and this is why, and this is the help that I need from you. This is what I need to have happen. And it was a big shift because we ate out a lot, and when we didn't, I did a lot of the cooking, and I ate a lot of, I cooked a lot of more unhealthy kind of things, in the bigger picture. Um, and so, it was like she was nervous at first. Like, does that mean we don't get to eat? Like, we don't get to go out or do these things? And it was like, no, we just need to, like, I'd like to maybe cook more food at home and have a little bit more kind of understanding of what we're eating and how much and all that thing. And so, over the years that kind of grew, and she learned how to cook food. And, I was always, like I said, I grew up with just in a single parent house with my dad. My dad worked a lot. So, I always liked to cook, and when I was home, I would spend time with my grandmother. She's an old Italian lady, so I was trying to cook with her so I could learn her recipes, because the recipes that she would give you were never the true recipe. You had to actually do it with her to see like what she left out or what she did different.
That's right. That's
Um,
in the secret sauce, baby.
yeah, like those old Italian ladies did that on purpose. Like if someone gets my recipe, it's not going to be the
That's
same as
right. That's
mine.
right.
So, but that was a thing. Like, again, going back to skills, right? That was a skill that I actually had that I was able to leverage to help me in this space. But I had to have that conversation to get the support. I had to talk to my wife about it. I'll never forget it. Like, she was so nervous at first. Like, what do you mean? And then it's like, okay, well, let's pick some things together that we like. And then it was like, all right, we'll try this once a week. Okay, I like this. And then it's like, well, what else do you want to try? Well, let's try this. And then eventually one meal became two, which became three, which, now we're cooking most of the meals at home. I'd say for probably the last 16 years. My son's 16 now, right? So that's kind of what spurred this whole thing. He turned 16 on Saturday. Um, I'd say 98% of the food that I eat is prepared at home. Right? I don't eat out very much anymore. We do. And when I do, I enjoy it. And I'm not guilty about it at all, but it's just easy. Plus, it's just easier for me now being at home.
Dude, she was with you for the full character arc then of like,
Oh,
hey, she was like, hey, that means that she loves you. Because if you just walked in as hot boy Dom, after losing the
no.
140-ish pounds, it would have been a different story. So shout out to the wife. It's holding
Yeah,
it down.
that's how it's the joke. I'm like, you got the upgrade.
Dude, it's
right?
funny. Like you talked earlier too a little bit about like your drinking relationship. And it's funny that my parallel with that is like when I was drinking heavily, I'll say like late teens, early 20s, I would do it to compete. So it was always like, oh, let's play this drinking game or let's do this thing. And then by the end of the day, you're like, oh man, I'm like wasted. But I had fun competing in the thing. And it
Hmm.
was never about the drinks. It was always about the camaraderie, the competition, whether you're playing beer pong or whatever game. I mean, you name it. I'm always trying to play a game, compete in some way. And that was the thing that I kind of found a number of years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. I tried like sobriety challenge because I was like, man, I'm like near 30, and I have spent my entire young adult life drinking, and I don't know the last time that I took 3 months of not doing it. So I like tried that, and then 3 months I was like, oh, like it became 6 months because I was interested to see, hey, how well could I say no to somebody else in a social setting? Kind of starting to build some of those tools and things that I had not previously entertained or even thought about. But I found that I could still compete and do the thing. It did,
Yeah.
and I could just throw soda water in there. It didn't matter. Like I was still going to talk shit and have fun with my friends. But it was just like I didn't need the drinking to be involved in that in any way. Which I'm not sure if you had any uh, similar
Yes.
experience happen. Yeah,
Listen, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, my friend he calls it the Outdoor Olympics. He has it at his house every year. It's a guy that played rugby with a bunch of our old rugby buddies and guys that he went to college and high school with get together. And he's got like, he sets up a whole bracket. There's pool play into a bracket. There's 12 different games, right? They're all drinking games mostly, right? All of them, like beer pong. We're playing, well, darts isn't, but like, there's drunk driver Mario Kart when he pulls out the old Nintendo 64 and you play Mario Kart. Like you can't
can't
drive while
drink
you're
and drive,
drinking.
right?
You
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
drive while you're drinking, and you have to finish a whole drink, a whole can, a whole beer or whatever it is before you cross the finish line,
right.
right? So like I do that thing every year. We did it this year. I had a couple of beverages, but I didn't go crazy. Like I did soda water, like you said, in between, and some of the thing. Most of them were, I'm playing the games with water or soda water, and I've got, like a vodka soda on the side. Yeah, I maybe had like 2 or 3 drinks during the day, right? Like good enough for me. Um, but yeah, so it's all the shit talking still there, all the fun was still there. Like
Yeah.
yeah,
And you probably woke up and didn't feel quite as awful. Like that's kind of part
and
of it too.
and that's part of it too, right? Like you know, I don't have a whole day to waste anymore, right? I've got things I want to do, things that are important to me, other people that are important to me that need my time, energy, and attention. I can't piss a day away laying on the couch feeling like a turd. Like I can't do it anymore, right?
Yeah. 100%, man. I think that kind of leads me to wanting to talk about some of the other things that we hit on before, whereas we were saying, oh hey, what is a difference between somebody who is a certified coach that could potentially recognize some of these habit patterns and things, whether they're PN trained or some other entity. So I mean, I'll tell you full disclosure, I have my American College of Sports Medicine certified personal training cert. Some people say it's okay. Some people say, whatever. But I'll tell you, for me to do that, I could buy a study exam and a practice test, and I could go and take an exam in a day. And as long as I could learn to take an exam, there, hominis dominus, here you go, dude. You can go work at Orange Theory and go do your thing. But what to you have you seen from people? And I don't necessarily think like all people are doing those types of things, but what have you seen the difference in like in somebody who's coaching, who's able to kind of broaden horizons and then invest in whether that's behavior modification or some other aspect of health so that you're able to continue to help people kind of be guided in the right direction, because obviously you were pursuing a bunch of different things from CSCS and all of that as well at some point. And people that are listening may be like, oh, like coaching is interesting to me. What's the biggest bang for my buck so that I can start to make the most impact? Because at the end of the day, that's what everybody wants to do. They want to make the most impact, right?
Yeah, I think so. It's a pretty nuanced question, multifaceted, which, as you know, where, like I know some people that are really, really good. I'll call them coaches, but we'll say personal trainers, right? That don't have any certifications, right? They've been doing it for years. They're really good with connecting with people. They know their shit in and out, like just from being in the trenches, being around some of the old guys, the old iron heads that were in the gym, and they know, right? They get results.
Lightweight,
And then on
baby.
the other,
Give them the
yeah,
Ronnie Coleman.
yeah. Then on the other hand, other side of that spectrum, you have people that have, alphabet soup after their name in terms of certifications, and maybe they're really not that great. Um, so the one shift that I've seen recently, and over the last several years, that I think really sets people apart, if you want someone to coach you, in terms of healthy lifestyle, whether it's, sleep, stress, nutrition, exercise, all of the things, behavior change. Um, people, there's been the addition of that National Board of Health and Wellness, where to become an MBHWC certified coach, they have to go through an approved program, which is typically, there's certain requirements that they have to meet. Then they have to have a certain amount of experience. They have to log a number of coaching sessions and all these things, right? You went through a program like that yourself. Um, and then they have to sit through this national board certified, where you go, right? It's an exam, but you can't even sit for the exam until you jump through all those other hoops, right? Which are training them to get there. It's not get a study guide and ram through with some, online test. You go to a proctored facility. It's, a day long exam. You don't get your answer right away because they go through all the questions, and like, they're like, oh, it's hard to pass. The people that write the exams for people to become doctors and nurses, and surgeons, they're the same ones that write the exam for this coaching, right? So to me, I feel like that's the biggest shift. If you're maybe looking for a coach and you want behavior change, look for someone that has, those credentials. To me, that is a credential that sets people apart. It's a newer thing. Maybe not everybody knows about it yet. Well, new-ish. It's starting to grow. It's been around for 10 years, but it's starting to grow in terms of interest for people. And that's how you kind of know. And you're not going to typically see those people saying, get shredded in 28 days. They don't have the sexy marketing typically, and that's the multifaceted part. It's hard, right? Because if you want real change and you want to learn real skills that are going to change your life and last you forever, like, how do you find the people that do that for you? They're not going to be the ones that are showing you, like, look at the 30-day transformation that I did, right? It's cool. Show me your 3-year transformation photos, right? Show me that. Not even physics. Show me the the positive feedback from the client 3-4 years later, and about how they're still living a healthy lifestyle because of the skills that you help them learn.
For
Right?
sure.
That's what you're going to start seeing. Again, like I said, playing the long game. So I don't know if that
Yeah.
answers exactly what you're looking
No, it
for, but
does.
that's
It
kind of my.
does. I actually, for anybody listening too, I did my L2 stuff with Dom and the guys over at PN, and I actually am currently going through the. I've been awful. I've had this coaching business for a number of years now. I think I started in 2022, and I finished my coaching calls with you to be able to like go through and then start then my 50 mentoring sessions, in which you guys have to do to with clients to prove that you're essentially practicing the tools that you learn throughout the process. And I have just recently started to document those in the correct fashion on their spreadsheet that marks out the time and what you're talking about and all that stuff, so that I can get ready to sit for my exam. Because yeah, I think it is something that would set you apart, because you are jumping through a ton of hoops, going through a credential program, doing 4.5 ish hours of mentoring sessions with somebody who has it, And then also you're then practicing it for 50 plus hours with somebody else and in sessions.
Before you can even sit for the test.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is huge.
That's before even sitting for the test.
Yeah. So I'm working through that now. I'm hoping to have it done by the end of the year. With now that I'm actually documenting these, I'm knocking out a bunch of them every week. So we'll make sure we get it back, and then I'll be sure to report back to you when the exam kind of fires off eventually. But yeah, that it's definitely a tough thing to get, and I think it will start to set people apart. You will see the people that are not maybe they're not popping up with millions of views on a social media page to be a coach, but what they are doing is guiding people through real change and helping them kind of make that lifelong shift. And I like to think that when you're doing that with people, word will get out. People will end up knowing just by word of mouth referrals, and then you'll attract the right people that kind of want to work with you at the end of the day.
Yeah, right. And especially now, right, with the prevalence of GLP-1s, where 1 in 8 people are on a GLP-1, right? Right, that takes care of some things, but it doesn't solve the problem like people think it does. Right. So now if you have someone that's gone through and has the coaching skills like you do, right, you can work with someone. You combine a coach that has these coaching skills with someone that maybe is on one of these medications. They can now learn and execute the skills in a little bit easier fashion because some of the food noise isn't there. Some of the other things, like just the barrier to entry is a little bit lower to be able to do the things that are going to last a lifetime. Right? People think like these shots are just going to fix everything, and they don't. Like, they do a lot, but they don't solve the problem. It's only a piece of the puzzle. Right.
Yeah, and there's always going to be an opportunity cost too, right? Like the cost for you to do that. The data is obviously super new with the GLP-1 thing, and it's scary sometimes to see what's happening and how fast it's happening. And I can see there's real benefit for people to kickstart some sort of a health journey or trend, but there's also, like, I think some dangers, and I'm interested to see. It's right now July of 2026. I'm interested to see what the numbers of osteoporosis in people are, call it 10, 15, 20 years down the line when this first kind of wave of people that are getting introduced to this GLP-1 are in that, like, kind of older demographic. I think those numbers are going to continue to climb.
This is my prediction. If they break that data down, you're going to notice there's going to be a separation. And the people that fall into the one side of I'm dealing with now osteoporosis, osteopenia, and some of these other things, they're going to fall into the category of I just got the prescription and was just slamming the drug into myself. And then you're going to have another group of people that did the same thing but don't fall into that space. It's going to be much smaller, right? And those are going to be the people that are like, yeah, I actually worked on my lifestyle changes, right? They lifted weights. They paid attention to the foods that they were eating. They took care of their stress. They made sure they were sleeping well. Like, they do the bigger picture. That's my prediction.
Yeah.
I think that data is going to be, you're going to be able to parse it, and you're going to be able to see the difference.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see as it kind of starts to shake out and boil down. But yeah, well, Dominic, thank you so much, man, for coming on. I really appreciate it. I know that it's not easy to be able to parse out an hour or so of your time to chat all things health. So thanks again for coming on. Do me a favor, like, tell the people if anybody's interested in where to find you, where to find access to, PN resources, whatever that kind of looks like. Feel free to give them a shout out, and I'll put all of that stuff, whether you want to find Dominic or PN, in the show notes here, so you guys can feel free. But just don't be creepy and, like, hit him up and ask for pictures of his feet or something like that, because it just gets weird,
Yeah, I got I'm not playing rugby like I was any before, so like I can show you some of my feet were always terrible because people were always stepping on them before. Yeah, so I could the best way to get me, if you're interested in working with me, just go to my Instagram. It's dmatteo77. You can find me there. There's a link in the bio where you can kind of express interest. If you're interested in anything that Precision Nutrition offers, just go to precisionnutrition.com. We do coaching there as well, for individuals and for other coaches. There's a pile of resources there, some of which I also have linked into my Instagram so they can see it there. I'm not quite as active on social media as I used to be, right? I've got 2 kids and, I coach wrestling and participate in jiu-jitsu and do all the other things too. So my time is pretty spent, but I'm happy to be here. I'd love to come back. There's so many other things I wanted to talk about with you. It's like we could
For
chop
sure,
it up
dude.
for a long time. So
Yeah, we'll have to have you back sometime soon, for real. It was super fun. Thank you again for coming on. And for anybody listening, definitely check Dominic out. He's got some great stuff that he's been doing for a long time in the space, and I really appreciate it, man. So, without further ado, don't forget, you don't stop playing because you get old. You get old because you stop playing. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.
awesome.